Hi, this is Jim Ferrero, and welcome to Class 4 of 9, the Intercambio Citizenship Prep classes. These recordings are made to help you if you have to miss one of the classes that you've enrolled in, but I do recommend attending the classes live because it gives you a chance to ask questions and also interact with the other students. My name is Jim Ferrero. I've been doing this for about 10 years now with Intercambio. I am not an immigration attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I don't work for the USCIS. I don't even work for Intercambio. I'm just a volunteer. But I've helped a number of students, probably going on 425, 450 people just like you who've gone through this process. And the vast majority of them have successfully gone on to become citizens. And that's what this class is for, is to help support you as part of our community who are going through this process. So by all means, ask questions. If you have a question about anything I say during this class, just give me a text. Send me a text at 720-660-5791. All right? All I ask is that you put your name in the text so I know who I'm talking to. Tonight, we're going to, in this video, we're going to talk about eligibility. The word eligibility means, why are you able to become a citizen? And what do you have to be, what qualifications do you have to meet to become a citizen? We're going to talk about those. We're also going to talk about the application and start going into that. The handbook, which hopefully you've got a copy of, has a really good description of the application process. And the handbook, that's actually on part 6, starting on page 20. But if you have any questions, send me a text. We're going to talk about the English test and the English reading and writing test. And I'm giving you some examples. Again, part 10 in the handbook, which starts on page 53, has the complete list of words that are used for the English reading and writing. So you know ahead of time, before your interview and before taking the test, what words in English they will be requiring you to read and write. We're going to talk about part B of the civics test, and part B are the questions 13 through 57. Again, that's in part 9 of the handbook, starting on page 37. And we're going to talk about what should you be doing before you submit your application, reminding about the change of address and the selected service registration. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Eligibility. Who can become a citizen? Well, green card holders, people who are lawful permanent residents who are 18 years of age and older can become a citizen. Only green card holders who have lived here in the United States for 5 years, or 3 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen. So you have to establish residency. Residence means where do you live? You have to have lived here for 5 years or 3 years if you're married to a U.S. citizen, and they have been a U.S. citizen for that entire length of time. Another way to say that is, if you and your spouse are both pursuing citizenship, they get their citizenship, you still need 5 years residence to before you can become one, as opposed to if your spouse was born here, then 3 years. And then there are the requirement of passing the tests, the civics test, the English reading, the English writing, and the English proficiency, 4 tests that are determined during the interview. That's the eligibility requirements. There's one more, and that is persons of good moral character. Good moral character. The simplest way to define that is the kind of people we want to be citizens, good people. We're going to go into that in detail in a whole separate class and talk about that. But essentially, part 12 of the N400 application is what they are basing the determination of good moral character, as well as the background check that they do on all applicants and determine if there's anything in their background that would prevent them from becoming a citizen, such as did they kill somebody? And there's something that serious. Um, so that is the eligibility. We're going to talk now about the N400 application, all right, and review some of the information we've already talked about and maybe introduce some new ideas as well. I am going to repeat that in the introduction of the handbook, and we've talked about this a couple of times, the very first class, we went over that introduction in some detail about the web page, the www.uscis.gov/N400 webpage. That webpage um, is where you would go to download as many copies of the N400 as you need. The first copy that you got that was sent to you when you enrolled in the class, hopefully you've been using as a worksheet. You've been writing on it and circling things you need, have questions about. But when you're ready to submit your application, you can download a clean copy and do that as many times as you need. We've talked about this before too, but there are two ways that you can apply. And that's covered in part 4 of the handbook, starting on page 13. Two ways. You can mail it in, and that's the old-fashioned way, the way it's been done for years, or you can submit it online. There's some pros and cons for each one of those. The mailing it in allows you to pay in more different ways because you can pay by personal check, you can pay by cashier's check, you can pay by money order, as well as by credit card or debit card. You can also, if you are applying for a reduction or a waiver of the fee, so you don't have to pay as much or at all based on your income levels, the forms that you would need to fill that out, you could only right now do that by mailing in your whole application. I think eventually they will probably have a part of the automated doing it online part where you can also apply for waivers and fee reductions. But right now, if you want a fee reduction because your income falls below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, essentially for a family of 4, that's $60,000. If your income is between $45,000 and $60,000, you can get your fee cut in half. So instead of $640, it's $320. If your income is below $45,000 for a family of 4, you can have your fee waived. So, but there are forms, and we get into that. It's in the handbook, and we'll get into that in the class too, on how to do that. But you'd have to mail those in. If you do it online, one of the advantages is that you know that they're starting work on it right away, and they've got it. There's no delay. So there's a little more speedy way to do it. You probably bought yourself a couple of weeks in the whole process by doing it online. Whether you mail it in or you submit it online, you need to make sure you keep a copy of what you submitted, okay? That's very important. Use only black ink if you mail in your copy and you do it by hand. Don't blue, not green, not red, not a Sharpie. Only use black ink. And then part 7 in the handbook, which starts on page 27, talks about what documents you need to include. It's a short list. You need to include both sides, a copy of both sides of your green card. Make a copy of one side, flip it over, make another copy of the back side. So a copy of both the front and the back of your green card. You need your current marriage document. Now, your current marriage document is your marriage license or your marriage certificate. Now, if that document for your current marriage is not in English. It needs to be translated, and that's something you can do yourself. Fill in and write a translation of any important words that explain the blanks that are filled in the application for the marriage certificate or the marriage license in English. If you have a question about translating that, or you need some information, further help on that, you can send me a text and I'll get into more detail on how to do that. Any document that you send in with your mailed in application, only send copies. Okay, never send the original marriage document, never send the original marriage certificate or license. Only send copies. Okay, because you may not get it back. Once they get the copy, it's possible they may not receive it back. So only send in a copy. If you have any, you need additional information to provide in your application, documentation on that, such as court proceedings, legal proceedings, if you were involved in a trial or something for a criminal offense. Those need to, you need to get certified copies from the court clerk or the county in which you had the trial. And I can get into more detail about that. But if you are filling out part 12 in the application, it explains that you need to provide documentation on anything that pertains to a legal matter, not traffic tickets, but a significant legal matter. Download the instructions from the website. Again, the same website, uscis.gov/N400. Download the instructions from the website and read them carefully. It's very important that you understand the instructions more than just what I'm explaining in the classes or in the handbook, but download the instructions from the USCIS and read over them. If there's any of those instructions that aren't clear to you, that you need help or more of an explanation, by all means, send me a text. Explain to me which part of the instructions you want help on, and I'll do my best to make them more clear. All right, I'm gonna wait on that and come back to that at the end of the class. Okay, so those are the short discussion on the application tonight. There's going to be more information in future classes, and certainly more information that's in the handbook about your application. Let's talk about the tests now. We're going to talk about the English reading, English writing tests, and I'm going to share the handbook. Actually, well, bear with me a second here. I need to. All right, let me try that again. I want to share with you here we go. Had to find it on my desktop. I had too many documents open. We're going to go to part 9 in the handbook here, or I'm sorry, part 10, which are the English tests. There are 2 English language tests in addition to the evaluation of your English proficiency that the interviewer will be making. But there are 2 tests, a reading test and a writing test. The interviewer will have you read a sentence using a specific list of words that are shown in the handbook right here in part 10. And you'll be given up to 3 sentences to read, and you must read one correctly. So if you read the first one correctly, they'll stop asking. But if you don't do well on the first one, you get a second chance, and then you get a third chance, but you only need to read one correctly. The writing test is similar. There's a separate list of words. They're about, they're like the reading list, but they will use those words to dictate, say out loud a sentence to you, and then you have to write it using a tablet. It's on the desk. The reading test, you're reading the sentence on the tablet as well. And they'll dictate up to 3 sentences to you, and you must get one correct. You'll use the electronic tablet for these tests, and you'll write on the tablet using a stylus device like a pen. Have you ever like gone to a pharmacy and had a prescription filled, and you had to sign your name on a little electronic um, device there on the counter? It's the same kind of thing. So I recommend printing, not writing in script because it's hard to read people's writing, but printing. You can't make a mistake and erase it. If you make a mistake, just X through that word and write it again and keep going. The examples of the type of sentences are they're simple, short, declarative sentences or questions in English. They only use the list of words that are we're going to go through in part 10 here. And examples are things like Washington was the father of our country, or Lincoln was the president during the Civil War, or the president of the United States lives in the White House, or George Washington is on the dollar bill. Simple, very, very simple sentences. They will say it out loud and you write it, or they will tell you, can you read the sentence to me, please, on the tablet, and you'll read it. Since you have the list of the words they're using, and you should be prepared to understand when you see one of these words, how to pronounce it, how to say it, what it means, or how to spell it if you hear them say it to you, you'll be able to do okay. But they only use these words. Many of the words below are simple and familiar with you, so you probably don't need to study those at great length, but some may not be so easy. Words like Washington, for example, many people have trouble spelling that. Go through the list of words and then circle the words that you're not comfortable with, that you know that you need to work on how to spell, pronounce, what the meaning of the word may be. We purposely left a lot of space for you to write notes to yourself. Maybe you want to write a translation into your own language of those harder words, or maybe you want to practice writing. Anyway, that's what all the space is made for you to work on this list. So let's start with the reading list words, okay? The list of reading words, and this is on page 53, are people like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington. Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. Then there are civic specific words, things like American flag, Bill of Rights, Capitol, which refers to both the building and the city in which the building is. Citizen, city, Congress. It's one of that's one of the 3 parts of government, which we'll go into in a bit here. Government, oh, I'm sorry, father of our country, government, president, right? You get the idea. Go through. Places, America, United States, US. Holidays, list of holidays. Questions, simple. How, what, when, why, who. Verbs, action words, can, come, do, does, elects, have, has, is, are, was, be, lived. You get the idea. Other function words, short little words. So just go through and circle the ones you're not comfortable with, or you know you need some work on. Again, be prepared. If somebody said the word out loud, that you could recognize it and then write it out. So you need to know how to spell it. Or if you can see it, that you can pronounce it, you can say it out loud. So practice saying it out loud, and as well as practice writing it. And know what the words mean. And then there's a separate list for the writing test word list. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you some examples of the words of the test sentences, okay? And these are just examples. These are by no means the words that you will have on your interview. There, I'm going to make this bigger. So, for the reading test, an electronic screen, up to 3 sentences will be offered to you to read aloud. The sentences will only use the words on the list on page 53. Yeah, page 53. Examples. Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States. Abraham Lincoln. So if you read that, Abraham Lincoln, they would expect you to be able to pronounce all of these words. Who lives in the White House? George Washington is on the dollar bill. George Washington was the father of our country. What is the capital of the United States? What are the colors of the American flag? Who was the first president of the US? In what city does Congress meet? How many senators are in Congress? Now, the reading test and the writing test could be a question like this: how many senators are in Congress? They're not expecting you to answer that question. They're expecting you to read it out loud to them. So if it has a question mark at the end, you know your voice needs to go up at the end. That's how you signify it's a question, right? How many senators are in the Congress? In what city does Congress meet? That's how you read a question. If you left out the word on, George Washington is the dollar bill, or you left out the word of, what is the capital of the United States? It would still be acceptable and you would be okay. So they want to make sure that you demonstrate you understand the question you're reading and you're familiar with the words. For the writing test, again, you'd be using a stylus. It's like a pen without a point that you're writing on the tablet. And you write these out, up to 3 sentences spoken by the interviewing officer. They will use words from a list and those on that. So examples are, the flag is red, white, and blue. The flag is red, white, and blue. If you didn't put a comma there or a period at the end, it would still be correct. You'd be fine. They wouldn't mark you off. Lincoln was president during the Civil War. Alaska is the largest state. There are 100 senators in Congress. Mexico is south of the United States. There are 50 states in the United States. American Indians were the first people in the United States. Freedom of speech is a right. Congress meets in Washington, D.C. Again, if you didn't put the periods in there, it would be fine. Don't worry about punctuation. George Washington was the first president. So these are the kind of sentences that you would use. So how do you prepare? Well, the easiest thing for you to do, I think, is to go through those lists and circle the words that you know you need to work on. And become familiar with saying them out loud. If somebody else said them, you would recognize them, you could understand them. So you need somebody to read them to you to help you. Work on the definition. What does the word mean? So once you've gotten that and you're comfortable with it, then work with somebody else. Maybe you've got one of your kids who can help you, or your spouse, and have them look at that list and make up a simple sentence using those words for you, and then give you that and you write them out. Or they would write this out and show it to you and you would have to read it. So those are some ways you could study that. All right. If you have any questions about the English reading and writing test, please send me a text and I'll explain it better than I'll explain it well enough so you'll understand it. We're next going to talk about the civics test. And again, civics just refers to the history, the culture, the government, the geography of a country. And that's what the 100 civics questions, they cover a whole bit. We had questions in part A, 1 through 12, such questions as, what is the supreme law of the land? Well, the answer is the Constitution. What is one right in the First Amendment? Freedom of religion or freedom of speech. What is the rule of law? No one is above the law. So go back to part 9 and read over 1 through 12 and make sure you're comfortable with those after today's class or after you watch this video. Now we're going to start on part 12, or I'm sorry, part B, which is questions 13 through 47. All right. Again, I'm going to put up kind of a screen up on the screen here, a study guide, something to maybe help you better understand particularly the system of government we have. How is our government set up? This can be somewhat kind of intimidating, but I'm going to try to present it in such a way that it'll be a little more clear for you. All right. So part B of this refers to the U.S. government has 3 equal parts. The 3 major parts of the U.S. government are equal. One is not over the other. For example, the president is not more powerful than the Congress or the judiciary, the Supreme Court. Or the Supreme Court is not more powerful than Congress, or Congress is not more powerful than the president. They are equal. Think of it like a 3-legged stool, all right? Each of the 3 legs has to be the same length. If they aren't, the stool totters over and it totters and falls over. So the 3 parts have to be equal. The 3 parts are the president or the administration. That's the presidential seal right there. The Congress is made up of 2 houses of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And the Capitol building here with the dome, one side is the Senate and one side is the House of Representatives. That's where the seat of our government is. The Supreme Court meets across the street from the Capitol building there, and the Supreme Court is made up of 9 justices. And the Supreme Court then has a series of federal courts and appellate courts underneath them. But those are the federal court system. The Congress writes the laws and creates the budget for the president. The president administers those laws and runs the government, the various Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Housing and Health and Human Services, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, the military. But the Congress gives him the budget, cuts the budget, tells him how much money he can spend, then that's how he spends, or she, someday. We'll have a woman president. But then the judiciary, or the Supreme Court, they determine, are the laws that the Senate writes, do they meet with the Constitution? Are they legal? Are the actions of the president legal? So these have a system of checks and balances. Checks and balances. That means they look after each other. The Senate writes the laws, but the president can actually veto the laws or approve them before they go into effect. If the president decides to veto or say, no, I don't agree with this law that you've just written, he sends it back to Congress. And then the Congress has to pass it again with a greater number of votes in the senators and the House of Representatives. And at that point in time, that overrides the veto. So a check and a balance. But then once the law is written, the Supreme Court then can determine, is this a constitutional law? So checks and balances. But they also have three distinct roles. Again, the president runs the various departments of the government and the military. Congress writes the laws and passes the budget. The judiciary is the courts and make sure everything's legal. Those are three separate powers that they operate. One is not more powerful than the other. Okay? So let's start with the president or the executive branch. Our current president is Joseph R. Biden. You can call him Biden, call him Joe Biden, Joseph Biden. The president oversees the executive branch. He can sign or veto the laws that that Congress writes. Serves a 4-year term, and he can be reelected once for a total of 8 years. He oversees the operation of the federal government, and how he does that is through what is called the cabinet. And this is a good 18th century English word that refers to a small room, which originally they met in a small room, and now it's much bigger. But the cabinet, president's cabinet, they advise the president, and it's made up of the vice president, and her name is Kamala Harris, a woman, the attorney general, and he leads up the Department of Justice. He's the chief legal officer of the government. And then there are various people who are over the departments. They're called the secretaries over the Department of State, the Department of Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, Education, Transportation, Energy, Treasury, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, and Housing and Urban Development. The president is also over the branches of the military, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, the Space Force now, the Marines. So the president has a budget that is given to him by Congress, and then he uses that budget to administer the activities of the federal government. All right. The Congress or the legislature, and again, that was the middle one with the Capitol building. If you picture that, there are two houses of Congress, two parts. There's the Senate and the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is overseen by a person called the Speaker of the House. They are elected by a majority of members of the representatives. There are 100 senators, 2 from every state. So there are 50 states. So 100. Sorry for the balloons. It's the gesture, I guess. There are 435 representatives. Now, why are there more representatives than there are senators? Well, again, the senators are 2 from every state, and there are 50 states. The representatives are based on the districts within the states they operate. Some states have more representatives than others. California has the most, 54, I believe, 56. Colorado has 9. Some states like Wyoming, Montana, Alaska, North Dakota only have 1 because their populations are smaller. But other states are bigger, like Ohio. The state itself is smaller than the state of Colorado, but it has a lot more people. So they have 20-some representatives. Texas has 35, I think. Florida has a lot. So depending on the population of the state, they have more representatives. And a representative represents the people within the district within the state. The senators represent everyone who's in the state. So the 2 senators, for example, from Colorado represent everyone who lives in Colorado. Senators serve for a term of 6 years. The representatives serve for a term of 2 years. And you'll remember I said the president serves for 4. The reason for that is every 2 years when they have a big federal election, the last one they had was 2022, the next one will be in fall of 2024. Everyone isn't running for office at the same time. they stagger when they're running for office so that at any point in time we have the experience of people who are already in office to help carry on. But Congress writes the laws and creates the budget that the president can spend to run the government. The third branch, or the third leg of that stool, is the judiciary or the federal courts. They settle disputes. They settle disputes, disagreements between two parties. They determine if the laws are constitutional. The Supreme Court is made up of 9 justices who are appointed by the president. They are voted on and approved by Congress. They serve for life or until they wish to retire. The current Chief Justice is a man named John Roberts. Below the Supreme Court are the federal district courts and appellate courts. There are 94 district courts and 13 appeals courts that are part of the federal system. So does that make sense now that you have these 3 separate parts of our government? All right. So now let's talk about the actual civics questions in part B. All right. I'm going to share. We're going to start on we're starting on page 39, B, the system of government. Okay. Yeah, I've got to find it on my desk. Bear with me. I'm sorry. All right. Okay. There it is. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, we are going to go back to part 9. And start on page 39, system of government, okay? The system of government. Can you name one branch or part of the government? Think about what the 3 columns, the 3 legs of the stool, the 3 columns. There's you can, and again, name one branch. You only have to give one answer. But here are the 6 answers that they'll accept. Congress, also known as legislative branch, or the president, or the executive branch, or the courts, or the judicial branch. But you only have to say one of those words. What stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? Again, you only have to say one of these: checks and balances or separation of powers. Who is in charge of the executive branch? The president. Who makes federal laws? Congress makes laws. Or you could say the Senate and the House of Representatives or the legislature. Any of these 3 are correct. Okay, they mean the same thing. What are 2 parts of the U.S. Congress? Well, again, picture that building, the Capitol building. One wing of it is the Senate, and the other is the House of Representatives. So you could say the Senate and the House. How many U.S. senators are there? Well, 50 states. Each state has 2 senators, so there are 100 senators. We elect a U.S. senator for how many years? 6 years. Who is one of your state's U.S. senators now? And you remember I said that some of the questions may change when there's an election. Well, possibility, this fall that one of your senators from your state that you're living in now might lose his election and a new senator comes in, or maybe they're retiring. So to find your current U.S. senator, you go to the U.S. Senate website, which is www.senate.gov. You click on that, and you conduct a search. Up there on the web page is a Find Your Senator. and you pull down a menu in the upper right corner and go down it until you find your state, scroll down. I'm in Colorado, so I would click on Colorado and I would click go. And right now, the answer for me in Colorado is Michael Bennett or John Hickenlooper. Michael Bennett or John Hickenlooper. Those are my two senators. But if you live in a different state, your senators will be different, and you can go to the senate.gov and determine who they are. The House of Representatives has how many voting members? There are 435 voting members. 100 senators, 435 representatives. We elect a U.S. representative for how many years? Well, 2 years. Every 2 years, we vote for a new one. Question 23, name your U.S. representative. Well, in order to find your current U.S. representative, you can go to the House of Representatives website, which is www.house.gov. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see Find Your Representative, and you enter your zip code. And it's possible they may also want your address, but most of the time, if you just enter your zip code, it tells you who your representative is. When I would do this, my answer is Joe Neguse, based on where I live. My zip code is 80516, and Joe Neguse is my representative for Boulder County. Who does a U.S. senator represent? Well, a senator represents all of the people in the state. Okay. Two senators for each state, and they both represent all the people in the state. Why do some states have more representatives than other states? Well, because the state's population. Some states have more people. All right. So any of those are the correct answer. We elect a president for how many years? 4 years. House of Representatives is 2 years. Senate is 6 years. And president is 4 years. But the president can run twice, so a total of 8 years. In what month do we vote for president? November. November every 4 years. 2024 is a presidential election. What is the name of the president of the United States now? Currently, it's Joseph R. Biden, Joe Biden, or Biden. You can say any of those. And what is the name of the vice president of the United States now? Kamala Harris, or you could just say Harris. 30. If the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? If the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? If they fall ill and die, if they're assassinated, which has happened, they die in an accident, the president can no longer serve, who becomes president? The vice president immediately becomes president. But if both the president and the vice president can no longer serve, who becomes president? The Speaker of the House of Representatives. Right now, the date of this video being made, that man's name is Mike Johnson. Who is the commander-in-chief of the military? Remember, the military, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. The military is all under the president or the executive branch. So the president is the commander-in-chief of the military. Who signs bills to become laws? The president. Who vetoes bills? The president. What does the president's cabinet do? And again, that word cabinet referred to a small room, not something hanging on the wall. The president's cabinet, they advise the president. Well, here's the complete list of all of the cabinet level positions, okay? All of them. And vice president down here, all of them. So, but you only have to list 2. So pick 2 that you can remember. Maybe the first 2, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce, or maybe the Vice President and the Attorney General. Anyway, pick 2, and that's going to be your answer. What does the judicial branch do? Well, they review the laws. They also explain the laws in great detail, and they resolve disputes or disagreements between parties. They decide if a law goes against the Constitution. What is the highest court in the land? The Supreme Court. How many justices are on the Supreme Court? There are 9. Who is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court now? John G. Roberts, or John Roberts. Question 41 and 42, I want you to listen to them. I think they sound very similar, but they refer to the separation between the federal government and each of the 50 states who are below the federal government. The Constitution divided up some powers and gave some powers to the federal government and some powers to the states. Something to help you remember and keep those straight is think about what's in your wallet. Hopefully, there's some money in your wallet. The federal government publishes money, prints money. We don't have separate money for each state. I don't spend Colorado dollars, and my friends who live in Kansas have Kansas dollars. We're spending US dollars. So the federal government prints money, and that's in your wallet. But the Constitution relegates or gives certain powers to the states. And one of those is to provide for protection, like with police and safety, with fire departments, but also to give driver's license. I have a Colorado driver's license. My friends in Texas or California or New York, they have driver's license from their state. So in your wallet, you've got a driver's license that was issued by the state and money that was printed by the federal government. So now let's look at question 41 and 42. And because I think they sound alike, this is somewhere they won't ask these two questions together on your test. So they may just ask one or the other, or maybe neither. But if they ask just one, you have to make sure you listen carefully so you know which one they're asking. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the federal government. What is one power of the federal government? Well, only the federal government can print money. Only the federal government can declare war. Only the federal government creates an army. And only the federal government makes treaties with foreign parties. The state of California doesn't write its own treaties with China. It's the US federal government that writes treaties with China. Only the US has Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. Only the federal government can declare war. Vermont cannot declare war on Canada by itself. It has to be the whole country. And the country prints money. But 42 I think sounds alike. Under our Constitution, some powers belong to the states, and that's the key, the states, as opposed to the federal government. Some of those powers are to provide schooling and education, to provide protection, police, to provide safety, fire departments, to give driver's license, you got your wallet, to approve zoning and land use, that's a state power, not a federal power. So study question 41 and 42 and make sure it's very clear in your mind the separation of powers between the federal government and the states. Who is governor of your state now? Well, you can go on your computer, your smartphone or your tablet, and just go to the search engine and ask who is my state's governor, and you'll get the answer. I live in Colorado. My governor is Jared Polis, Polis. What is the capital of your state? Again, you can go on your computer, tablet, smartphone, and ask what's my state capital. And I live in Colorado, so my state capital is Denver. What are the two major political parties of the United States? Well, the major political parties are Democrats and Republicans. And what is the political party of the president now? He is a Democrat. What is the name of the Speaker of the House of Representatives now? Mike Johnson. But come 2024, it's possible that that would be a different answer. Or if Mike Johnson gets replaced. So it's important that you know who the Speaker of the House is at the time of your interview. And that's the part B. Wow, we've gone through 47. We've almost gone through half of the list of 100 questions. All right. So again, we'll go back and we'll study these again, but these are ones you can study on your own. Studying the civics questions is you read through them, make sure you understand the question, make sure you understand the answer, and it makes it easier to remember the answer. Okay? But the test is given orally. They will ask the question and you have to answer it. So you have to be used to hearing the question and be able to answer it. So at a given point in time, after you're very familiar with all 100 civics questions, start getting somebody to help you by asking you the questions. Give them the handbook, turn them on to part 9 and have them just start flipping through it and randomly asking you the questions, because they will be asked in all sorts of crazy order. But again, they will only pick 10 and you only have to get 6 right. Okay. All right. Almost done today. What should you do before you submit your N400? If you haven't submitted your N400 yet, what should you do right now? We've talked about this. First, notify the USCIS if you have moved since you got your green card. If you live in a different place than you lived when you got your green card, you can go online at the www.uscis.gov/N400, and the little Ask Emma, you can click on that and type in change of address, and it'll take you right where you need to go. There's a form you can download. It's called an AR11. And again, you can fill that out with your current and mail it in if you prefer. It's just as easy to do it online. It doesn't cost anything to file a change of address. But you should have notified them within 10 days of moving. All right, that's pretty important. But if you haven't, it's not the end of the world, and it's not going to keep you from becoming a citizen, but you should do it before they get your application that has your current address. Because if they get your application, has a current address, they're going to pull up your file. And if that file has a different address and they don't match, causes questions. But if they get your application and you file a change of address and they pull it up and your addresses are going to match, it looks good. What's the other thing you should do? Well, if you're a man who is in the country between the ages of 18 and 26, you should have registered with the U.S. Selective Service. You should have. You can check at www.sss.government. And when you go to that website, there's a thing to verify registration. You click on that, and it asks you your name, your birth date, your social security number, and it tells you what your selective service number is. It's possible you may not remember ever filing and registering, but certain states, Colorado is one of them, I think there's like 16, that when you go to get a driver's license, they automatically apply for your selective service registration. Some schools do it when you're enrolled in the school, they do it for you. So it's possible you're registered and you don't even know it. Or if it happened a long time ago and you don't remember your selective service number, you can go online, this website, and you can get that. All right. So that's what we had to do today in today's class. We went through and we talked about your eligibility, how is somebody qualified, what do you have to be to become a president or a citizen? You have to be a citizen to become president, but the application, review what you've already learned. But we talked a little bit about the application process. Uh, Two ways you could apply online or mail it in. Use only black ink. The documents you need to include with it, your both sides of your green card, your current marriage document, your current marriage certificate or whatever, and the fee, of course, and any additional information that might be indicated by how you answered the N400 in part 12. We talked about the English test. I gave you some examples of what the English reading and writing sentences or questions might be. And I showed you how to find what the words are and what to do with that list of words. We talked about the civics test and specifically went over the three parts of government and how they differ, the separation of powers, the checks and balances, important thing, concepts. And then lastly, we talked about the questions 13 through 47. And that's what we covered in this class. Thank you very much. And again, if you have a question about any of this, send me a text. But just tell me who it is and send me a text. Thank you very much. And I'll see you in the next class.